Welcome, students. We were discussing a triumph of surgery in our previous classes. Now we will continue the same chapter, a triumph of surgery. In the previous part, we have seen what sort of treatment was given to Tricky, and we found that the progress of Tricky was satisfactory. Remember, doctor has not given any medicine to Tricky, or you can say any medicinal treatment was not given to Tricky. He was given only water, plenty of water, and the progress was seen. The progress was satisfactory. Now after that we go further. He became an accepted member of the gang. He refers to Tricky. Tricky became an accepted member of the gang. The gang here refers to the gang of dogs. An unlikely, silky little object among the saggy. Saggy here means long, thick, and unkempt. Saggy means long. Crew here means helper. Fighting like a tiger for his share at the meal time, and hunting rats in the old hen house at night. So this is the activity of Tricky after recovery. So now he was accepted as the member of the gang, and he also involved himself in fighting like a tiger for his share at meal times and hunting rats in the old hen house at night. So here we have seen the small activities of Tricky. Now Tricky has become the member of the gang, and the gang has accepted him as the member, and Tricky also did some different activities as fighting like a tiger for his share at mealtime, and second, hunting rats in the old hen house at night. He had never had such a time in his life. Meaning is this: in the clinic of a doctor, veterinary doctor, Tricky got freedom. He moved according to his will, and such type of activities he never did in his life. So Tricky got a sort of freedom in his life. He had never had such a time in his life. Means he never got a chance to involve himself with the gang of dogs and enjoyed in fighting for the meals, enjoyed for hunting rats, which he was doing here. All the while Mrs. Pumphrey hovered here means remain poised or uncertainty in one place or between the two states. Now hovered here means Mrs. Pumphrey was moving. She was moving here and there, and anxiously in the background, and ringing a dozen times a day for the latest bulletins. Bulletins here means short official statement. In order to know the condition of Tricky, Mrs. Pumphrey was calling again and again. She did a lot of calls in order to know the condition of Tricky. I dodged the questions about whether his cushions were being turned regularly or his correct coat worn according to the weather. Such type of questions were asked to the doctor, where the cushions were changed and Tricky was wearing the clothes or coat according to the weather or not. Okay, so such type of questions are asked by Mrs. Pumphrey to veterinary doctor, Dr. Harriet, whether the cushions of Tricky was changed or not. Okay, or he was wearing the dressings according to the weather or not. So these questions are asked by Mrs. Pumphrey. But I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and convalescing rapidly. means recovering rapidly. So whatever the questions were asked by Pumphrey, the answer was only given that the progress of Tricky was satisfactory. He was recovering very well. Okay, he was recovering rapidly. He is out of danger. That was the reply of veterinary doctor. The word convalescing seemed to do something to Mrs. Pumphrey. When Mrs. Pumphrey heard this word that Tricky was recovering, she got satisfaction. So here, especially in this paragraph, we have noticed that the activity of Tricky, his involvement in various activities we have seen. Secondly, we found that Mrs. Pumphrey called dozen times in order to know the condition of Tricky, whether he was improving or not, whether he was wearing coat according to the weather or not. So these questions were asked by Mrs. Pumphrey, and the reply of doctor was only that Tricky was recovering rapidly. When she heard that he was recovering rapidly, then she got satisfaction. So इस पूरे पैराग्राफ में केवल यही देखते हैं कि मुख्य रूप से ट्रिकी जो है एक्सेप्ट कर लिया गया है गैंग के द्वारा एक मेंबर, और ट्रिकी भी जो है विभिन्न प्रकार की एक्टिविटीज़ जो है करता है, जैसे कि हंट करना मील टाइम के समय और रैट को हंट करना है। तो ये सारी चीज़ें वो करने लगा, और मिसेस पम्फरी कई बार कॉल करती है ये जानने के लिए कि उसकी कंडीशन क्या है, और डॉक्टर केवल यही कहता है कि उसकी रिकवरी बहुत तेज़ी से हो रही है, और ये सुन करके मिसेस पम्फरी बहुत ही खुश हो जाती है. सो दिस इज़ द पार्ट विच वी हैव डिस्कस्ड इन दिस पैराग्राफ. नाउ नेक्स्ट, she started to bring round fresh eggs, 2 dozen at a time. She here refers to Mrs. Pumphrey. She started to bring round fresh eggs, 2 dozen a time, to build up Tricky's strength. So these things were given to Tricky in order to make his health good. For a happy period, my partners and I had 2 eggs each for breakfast. This line clearly shows that whatever things were brought by Mrs. Pumphrey, these things were not given to Tricky. It was eaten by doctor himself or other partners. But when the bottles of wine began to arrive, the real possibilities of the situation began to dawn on the household. So 2 eggs were given. Now bottles of wine also coming. It was to enrich Tricky's blood. Wine was given to Tricky so that his blood can be enriched. Lunch became a ceremonial occasion with 2 glasses of wine before and several during the meal. So here you see what happened when Mrs. Pumphrey started bringing eggs, wine. Then doctor and his partners became very happy. They used to take wine after each meal. So it was a very pleasurable time for doctor himself and the partners who were taking care of Tricky. So here, especially in this paragraph, we have noticed what things were brought by Mrs. Pumphrey in order to make Tricky's health good. Eggs were given, bottles of wine was there. Okay, bottles of wine began to arrive. She started giving bottles of wine, and doctor and his partners started enjoying this situation. They started taking wine after each meal, so it is good for them. It is a pleasurable moment for doctor and his partners. So come to next one. We could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final edge on Tricky's constitution. Remember, Mrs. Pumphrey had made a chart for Tricky, what things should be given to Tricky, what sort of diet should be given to Tricky. According to it, she started bringing to the hospital, and it was not given to Tricky. Doctor and other members were enjoying the things that were given by Mrs. Pumphrey. Now after wine there was a brandy also, brandy for Tricky. For a few nights the fine spirit was rolled around, inhaled and reverently drunk. Reverently here means with deep and solemn respect. So meaning is this, they enjoyed this moment. They were days of deep content. When wine, brandy were brought for Tricky, at that time it was not given to Tricky, it was drunk by doctor and other partners, and they thought that it was a very pleasurable time, and everyone is enjoying, everyone has satisfaction, has deep content. Content means satisfaction. Starting well with extra egg in the morning, improved and sustained by the midday wine, and finishing luxurious round the fire with the brandy. So this is the activity of the doctors and other partners who were taking care of Tricky. So such type of life was of Tricky. Tricky had very luxurious life, and what things were brought for Tricky, these things were enjoyed by whom? Doctor and his partners. So especially in this paragraph we have seen whatever the things were brought by Mrs. Pumphrey, these things were enjoyed by doctor and his partners. These things were not given to Tricky. इस पूरे पार्ट में हम देखते हैं कि ट्रिकी के लिए एक्स आता है, ब्रांडी आती है, वाइन आता है, और ये सारी चीज़ें ट्रिकी को न दे करके डॉक्टर और उसके पार्टनर जो उनका केयर कर रहे थे ट्रिकी का, वो सारी की सारी चीज़ें जो है अपने लेते थे, और इन लोगों को बहुत अच्छा लगता था। सुबह एग लेना, फिर उसके बाद मिड डे में वाइन, फिर जो है लास्टली जो है ब्रांडी लेते थे, बहुत ही उन्हें अच्छा लगता था। So this is the activity of doctor and as well as Mrs. Pumphrey. So why these things were given by Mrs. Pumphrey? Only to make Tricky's health good, only to rebuild Tricky's strength. Eggs were given, wine was given, okay, brandy was given. Okay, this is the reason. But these things were enjoyed by whom? Doctor and his partners. Come to next one. It was a temptation to keep Tricky on as permanent guest. So in the previous part we have seen that the life of doctor and his partners had changed, because they started taking eggs in the morning, then in the midday they used to take wine, and they used to take brandy. Meaning is this, they were leading a luxurious life. Now they had a temptation, they had a attraction towards Tricky, they had a desire to keep Tricky forever. They wanted that Tricky should remain here permanently so that they can get good food, they can enjoy their life, they can live luxurious life. This is the aim of doctor and his partners. They had a desire to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest. But I knew Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering, and after a fortnight felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. But here doctor said to Mrs. Pumphrey that Tricky was recovered. Tricky's recovery was now finished. Meaning is this, that now Tricky is good. Tricky has a good health. Now I was awaiting collection. So I am waiting that you come and collect Tricky. So especially in these 3-4 lines, we have seen what was the desire of the doctor and his partners, that they wanted to keep Tricky as a permanent guest so that they can live a luxurious life. But doctor informed Mrs. Pumphrey that Tricky had recovered, Tricky had good health now. He was awaiting for collection. He was waiting that you come and collect the Tricky. Within minutes, what happened, you see? Within minutes, about 30 feet of gleaming gleaming here means shining black metal drew up outside the surgery. The chauffeur means driver, opened the door, and I could just make out the figure of Mrs. Pumphrey, almost lost in the interior. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. Her lips trembled. "Oh, Mr. Harriet, do tell me the truth. Is he really better?" "Yes, he is fine. There is no need for you to get out of the car. I will go and fetch him." So here you can see, especially in this paragraph, within minutes what happened. Within minutes, remember that Dr. Harriet phoned Mrs. Pumphrey that you come and collect Tricky. So within a minute what happened, about 30 feet of gleaming black metal, shining black metal drew up outside the surgery. So there was a car. The chauffeur opened the door, and I could just make out the figure of Mrs. Pumphrey. Now doctor thought that now Mrs. Pumphrey had come. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. Her lips trembled. His lips trembled. She wanted to know what is the condition of Tricky. "Oh, Mr. Harriet, do tell me the truth. Please tell the truth. What is the condition of Tricky? Is he really better?" Doctor says, "Yes, he is fine. There is no need for you to get out of the car. You remain in the car. I will go and fetch him. I will bring Tricky for you. You remain in the car." So this was the suggestion given by doctor to Mrs. Pumphrey. He said that you remain in the car. I will go and fetch the Tricky. Okay. So here you see that when Pumphrey came to know that she had to come and collect Tricky, without losing time, she reached the clinic, and chauffeur opened the door, and she was about to leave the car and went to collect Tricky. In the meantime, doctor said, "You remain in the car. I will go and fetch Tricky. I will bring Tricky. You remain in the car." So यहाँ पे हम देखते हैं कि जैसे ही डॉक्टर फ़ोन करते हैं पम्फ्री को कि आप आइए और जो है ट्रिकी को लेके जाइए, तो विद इन मिनट्स क्या होता है, तुरंत जो है मिसेस पम्फ्री जो है क्लिनिक पहुंचती है और डॉक्टर से पूछती है, वास्तव में सही बताइए क्या कंडीशन है ट्रिकी की, इज़ ही रियली वेल? देन डॉक्टर सेड, यस, you remain in the car, I will go and fetch him. So that was the part which we have discussed. Okay, so here you see that in this whole part we have discussed that what sort of life Tricky was leading, and when the precious things were brought for Tricky in order to make his health good, these things were enjoyed by doctor and his partners. And these things include eggs, brandy, wine, and further we see that doctor and his partners had a desire to keep Tricky as a permanent guest so that they can enjoy their life, they can enjoy luxurious life. But doctor phoned Mrs. Pumphrey that you come and collect Tricky. After that, what happened? Mrs. Pumphrey came and asked the condition of Mrs. Condition of Tricky. Doctor informed her that he was well, now he will go and fetch him. So this is the part we have discussed. Okay, thank you.